Film Club.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Film Club. I'm one of your hosts, Shrimphead, and with me, as always, it's Small B.
Hello. Good night.
Every week in Film Club, we invite you along to watch a film with us, and this week we're taking a look at The Killer.
The Killer is John Woo, and it's a mafia hitman. He's coming towards the end of his career. He accidentally, in one of his shootings, he damages the eyes of a singer that he's acquainted with, and he looks to redeem himself. He looks to pay for surgery so she can see again. On the way, he makes up a nemesis/friend who is a policeman, and together they defeat the mafia. This is brilliant, right? The movie came out in 1989. I believe this is the first John Woo film we've done. However, this film for 1989 is quite dated, right? And I'm going to just say this first. You know, some of the effects are a bit odd. Some of the choice camera edits are weird. Like, for example, when he's going to assassinate the political figure, and it's like this quick cut of getting the gun there, and it's a bit cliche in parts. However, it's fucking brilliant. It really, really is enjoyable. There were so many parts, there's so many moves in this, so many kind of like the standoffs, the action sequences, there's a brilliant, boat and car chase. And it's really cool because you can see the kind of influence in films later on, like The Matrix. You can see it in Tarantino's kind of work, how he's been influenced by this. And it all kind of came together to bring about this really, really enjoyable action film. For something quite dated as it is, I don't tend to enjoy them, but this really is kind of an opposite. I've really enjoyed this.
The thing with John Woo films is that his work made such an impact on the genre. So he's a Hong Kong filmmaker, and he's sort of responsible for having a great deal of impact on action in terms of its sort of obsession with guns and gunplay. Like,
oh, really?
When he was making his first sort of films, he got into things like martial arts films. You can see, do you remember when we were looking at some of those Hong Kong martial arts films a couple months back?
Police Story.
You can see that sort of obsession with choreography. Filmmaking at the time wasn't mired in any sort of like digital reconstruction of things. It was trying to figure out how to do things practically. And John Woo learned like a lot of that sort of stuff, but then started applying it to this like mafia sort of triad aesthetic that came with his Hong Kong Chinese influence. But what you end up with is this like what almost became its own genre. I mean, what it's normally referred to, right, is something called the heroic bloodshed film. Heroic bloodshed is, The Killer is a prime example of this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But not only didn't just sort of like stay there and sit in the heroic bloodshed genre itself, but over the last, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years, however long it's been now, that sort of stylistic, that obsession with like, it's the phrase I never really liked, but gun fu, that blending of kung fu with firearms as well, that has really bled into a lot of Western cinema.
Everything came together in a way that was just so enjoyable, and it makes me want to watch more John Woo.
What I kind of like about his work is that it doesn't shy away from being weirdly hyperbolic and sort of over dramatized. Like, not only is the action over dramatized, but also the drama is over dramatized. Everything about it sort of like is just a slightened reality that's going on, and it's sort of like indulgent, a little campy in that respect, in all the best sort of ways. Like, when I watched this week, I watched it after like not really sleeping the night before, having a super busy day. The lights were really dim when I was watching it, and it was like a fever dream because nothing really settles to ever feel like normality. Like, the film doesn't really open with the traditional sort of like, here's the normal life of your protagonist before they get thrust into a story. It opens with this like religious Christian symbolism thrown straight into a gunfight. A woman's getting blinded, and it's almost like this sensory overload of like, we are hitting the ground running.
It's really massively quick-paced action throughout the whole film. Even the moments where they settle down and have like a little bromance going on. The bromance is brilliant, by the way, between the two leads. There is an absolutely brilliant scene where they have the standoff and they're on about football friends from back in the day that you obviously mentioned at the very start of the review. And just, there's a couple of moments I really want to stand out because I burst out laughing. And again, we know it takes a lot for us to burst out laughing, but right, I need to go to the toilet. Oh, I need to go too. It's like, no, you can't. You go all the time. He goes, oh, look what a big rat that is. Runs away. It was just so simple. And I don't know if the translation fully came through, but I was howling at that scene. And yet it didn't deter from the actual, how tense the situation was, trying to pin him down. It was just a brilliant bit of comedic timing that worked in amongst that scene. The really cool standoff.
It comes off of like a really funny scene as well that is walking that line between comedy and drama, where they're holding each other at gunpoint in front of the woman who's blind.
Oh,
so she doesn't
Jenny,
know,
yeah.
and it's charming. It's a bit silly, but you're right. It doesn't sort of let up on the tension as well.
It's brilliant because she's offering them tea, and then the sergeant comes through, and she's like, "Oh, you got another pal? Do you want some tea as well?" And it's just like, "No, it's all right. He can go. There's an old woman out there, Granny can look after." It's a brilliant scene. It was one of my favorites. There's some also really good production scenes. Despite, as I said, this film's aged. The dragon boat scene with a boat is brilliant, and some of the car chase scenes. It reminded me not to the same level, but it reminded me an awful lot of Bullet. Some of those kind of really good car scenes. Again, the build up the tension. The pacing's really good. It's really quick, but it's not. It doesn't shy away from that kind of the moments. Establishing someone's after him. We need to protect this politician. And then in the end, obviously, when they run away and the child gets hit and he runs away in a car, they have another standoff in the hospital. It just, as you said there, everything's just thrown at you, and you're just there to take it all in, but in a brilliant way. This film is 2 hours long, and it does not feel 2 hours long. It feels like an hour because it just happened so quickly, and yet at no point was I bored. It's a brilliant film.
Absolutely. I love the fact that the film is so drenched in atmosphere as well. Like they do that sort of very deep, rich blacks offset against lots of bold colors. So like backlights will often be red or backlights will often be blue. Actually reminds me a lot of like Michael Mann's Manhunter when we reviewed that many, many moons ago now.
Oh, yeah. I do remember that, yeah.
Just want to give a shout out before we actually wrap this up. We've got to talk a little bit about two people, because although there is a romance in this film, as you suggested earlier, that's not really the thing we care about. The relationship that we care about is the bromance going on between Danny Lee, who is absolutely fantastic, and Chow Yun-fat, who obviously after this goes on to become a long-time collaborator, doing quite a few films with John Woo.
Oh, I didn't know that. So all the more reason for me to go and see his future work, because that scene where they sat down together and it's like, if anything happens to me, can you give my corneas away? Obviously, if you're going to arrest me, you're going to let me run. Well, hopefully, if fate decides that'll never happen. The idea that that they'll die together as friends, brilliant. Really, I mean, even then, like kind of the writing as well as cliche and as it can be, really works and really establishes their friendship, their depth of their characters and their journey that they've had with one another, and their offset, and then suddenly they come together is absolutely fantastic.
Yep, absolutely. Brilliant film. I think it's definitely among one of John Woo's best, and we should definitely come back and do more of John Woo in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
But there is The Killer. You can let us know in the comments below what you thought of the film. But Andy and I are going to be back once again next week, where it's time to take a look at Room.
Cheers, guys.
Until then, get watching.